There we go, we're recording. So welcome everyone, let's make a start. Some of us are here. We're going to talk today about how to fix your innovation program, or at least we're going to spend 20 minutes giving you some practical tips and tricks as to where you might start. So let's get going. So let me introduce myself. I'm Helen Dawson and I help digital innovation leaders unblock progress so that they can get on with delivering business value. And I do that through executive coaching and mentoring and consulting. I've been there. I've been that digital innovation leader. I led digital transformation for Shell Retail globally. So that's a $1 billion business in 70 or 80 countries now, I think, and with 45,000 locations worldwide. So the fact of the day, that's more than Starbucks and more than McDonald's. So I want to share this practical advice with other people so that they can navigate the challenge of driving innovation in successful companies more effectively. So I'm here to talk to you about why progress doesn't always happen in a straight line in corporate innovation and what you might be able to do about that. So I'm going to present for about 20 minutes, then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. There's a little bit of audience participation, so if you open your chat window, that'll be helpful when the time comes. So let's get started. So what am I going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about the challenge. Leading innovation is tough, right? And it's tough for everyone. You're not alone. And it's tough for two reasons. So the first is that the odds are stacked against you. And the second is that the clock is ticking. So I'll talk about how to beat the odds, how to beat the clock, and then taking that first step to get started. So come with me and I'll show you why the things that you think are obstacles are actually the way. So leading innovation is tough, I've said. Maybe you're caught up in bureaucracy, maybe your team doesn't have the right skills, maybe the corporate antibodies are out to get you. You might have current year cash targets that are undeliverable, but you're a successful leader with a track record and you've been given one of the coolest jobs in the business, and yet you're stuck in second gear. Excuse me. So let me show you some of the reasons that innovation teams have given me as to why it's hard. And give me a thumbs up or a comment in the chat if one of them resonates with you. Yeah, senior leaders never seem to get it, Zara. Yeah, so true. If it's the very last one that resonates, which I've written as my career might not survive this unless I get a win, then maybe don't put anything in the comments, but come and have a chat to me later. So innovation is tough. It's the nature of the beast. But why is that? So the first thing to say is that the odds are stacked against you. How many ideas do you think it takes to find one commercial success? Something that's big enough for your company to care about. Be brave and write something in the chat. Any more takers? So the research says that it's between 300 and 500 raw ideas to find something that's going to be a commercial success. If you want to read on this, look at some Stanford lectures by Alberto Savoia, or there's an excellent book called Loon Shots by Safi Bakul. There's even older research that suggests it might be more like 3,000. So that came from research looking at patents. And it's industry dependent as well. So bad news, if you work in pharma, you might need more ideas, more starting ideas to come up with something that's going to work. And even when you filtered out the ones that obviously won't work, so I don't know, tap dancing penguins, your chances of success are a fraction of a percent. If you think that only applies to startups and it doesn't apply to big companies, well, I'm here to tell you, sorry, but even big established companies get this wrong. And I'm not just talking about Blockbuster failing to see the rise of Netflix, or Kodak inventing and then being disrupted by the digital camera. Coca-Cola's reformulation in the 1980s, total disaster. Pepsi introduced a clear cola drink, disaster. 90% of all new product introductions bomb and are rapidly withdrawn from the market. Same goes for Amazon, same goes for Google. There's actually a website that is the graveyard of Google product launches that died. So why even bother? Well, because the outsized returns are worth it. If you look around, you know that your industry is being disrupted. Your company knows it too. That's why they want innovation programs. And that's why they have someone like you leading it. So what to do? So you've got 300 ideas. Ideas are actually easy. They're everywhere, by the way. You've picked a few that you want to explore. You need to make sure you're working on the right it. You can't prioritize your way to the right it by looking at a spreadsheet. You need to learn by doing. You need an innovation approach where you can experiment, where you can learn. And the challenge with that is the rest of your organization is simply not used to working that way. They're used to rinse and repeat, doing it the same old way inside the day-to-day business that they're super familiar with. So it's going to feel really countercultural, but your team needs to be experimenting quickly, cheaply, and finding out if you have the right it. After all, you might have another 299 ideas to work through before you find that winning idea. You'll notice I do not use the words fail fast. Lots of people are going to tell you to fail fast. I'm sorry, but I disagree. No one wants to fail, and they certainly don't want to sacrifice their career for a perceived failure. But if you find out quickly and you hardly spend any money, no one's going to call that a failure. So that's why quick and cheap is so important. For most of you, the technology is going to work. Sure, it might be complicated, but your IT team can figure it out. The bigger challenge is whether customers want it, whether they're prepared to pay for it, and whether you can find enough of them to make a business out of it. Lots has been written on how to do this well. We could spend the whole webinar talking about how to do this well. The process is vital, but there's more that I need to tell you about how to achieve this inside a big company. But if you want to read further, the Lean Startup, Sprint, The Right It, they're all brilliant books that will talk about this process. What will it feel like if you're doing this well? Well, your team's going to kill off loads of ideas, but actually they'll think of better ideas from what they've learned from those ideas they've killed. Some of your experiments might be scrappy. They might be downright embarrassing. But actually, that's okay if they help you learn. You're going to have to be brave frequently, probably daily, to explain why your team is doing something in a different way. And you're going to need to be balancing protecting your team's ideas while you incubate them, and then when they're big enough, exposing them to the rest of the organisation, like a seedling that you might grow in a greenhouse and then plant outside. And like gardening, it's an art, not a science. What might some of the pitfalls be? Well, if you're spending weeks on PowerPoints and business cases, alarm bells should be ringing, and perhaps getting bogged down in bureaucracy might be an alarm bell. So we found the writing. What do we do? Oh, I think I've got an echo. There we go. So we've got the right it. What do we do? Well, we need to be working not only on the right it, but in an arena and in an area that has the potential to be big enough for your parent company to care about it. If you're working in a $1 billion revenue business, then your $5 million innovation just isn't going to be interesting. And I call this, is the juice worth the squeeze? So don't pour time and effort into something that your parent company is not prepared to support, because even if customers love it, that won't be enough to sway the balance. If you want to get a crash course on what not to do, then CNN Plus was a streaming service that they sank $300 million into, and yet it was killed off by its newly merged parent company less than a month after launch, because the parent company simply did not want to support that idea. So how do you do this? Well, align on some themes or some arenas that your team's going to innovate about. Have some weak signals about the future that gain some consensus in your organisation. Frame it as creating real options for the future. What if X happens? How might we respond? Does this sound like strategy work? Well, yes, it is strategy work, but actually it's really common for this part of strategic thinking to be missing. And the strategy instead has something vague about let's be digital first, or let's shift from products to services, or services to products, but without saying in which arena or in what way. So strategy is now part of your job too. The other thing to say is strategy is about making choices. The future's uncertain, so get comfortable with leaving some promising opportunities behind. You can always come back to them later if you found you had the wrong it, or if you have the bandwidth for another success. So get comfortable with leaving good ideas behind. So we talked about beating the odds, but I also said the clock is ticking. So another bit of audience participation. What do you think the lifespan is of an accelerator, an incubator? Every company calls them by a different name, but give me some suggestions in the chat. What do you think the lifespan is? Oh, 18, not bad. These are good guesses. So yes, the research says it's about 24 months. Rita McGrath, a professor at Columbia University, talks about this a lot. And whether you call them an accelerator or a transformation or an innovation program, most of them don't survive beyond their second birthday. So why is that? Well, changes in leadership happen all the time. The other day I was looking at LinkedIn and a friend posted a 20-year work anniversary, and she'd had 8 different roles, but she'd had 15 different bosses. Each leader's going to have a look, take stock, and if they're not bought in, they'll start again. The second thing to say is that cost-cutting calls come all too frequently. I mean, we know the current situation around cost of living and inflation. So executives are looking to cut costs, and if they don't see the value, then innovation is the first thing to be sacrificed. After all, the first rule of business is to survive. So why is this a problem? Well, there's a mismatch in the timeline here. It takes around 7 years to build a new business model inside a corporate into a revenue stream that's material, that could be a business unit in its own right, that could be global. And yet many companies are really just focused on the short term, this short-term focus on shareholder value. And this mismatch in expectation can cause even promising opportunities to be axed before they've managed to reach their potential. So what do I mean by that? Even if you're doing everything right, if your executive leadership do not understand the value, then your program is at risk. You might think that you're the only one that's noticed that your program's stuck in second gear, but actually others will also see some of the anchors that slow your progress and hold your program back. And if they think they're insurmountable, then the company again might cut its losses in the absence of a way forward. So what do we do about that? The first thing to say about beating the clock is that your parent organisation needs to see the value from you and your team, even though you might be generating zero revenue or maybe minimal revenue. So become great at storytelling. Explain this big picture while you're still experimenting on a really small scale. And you need to tell that story over and over. People used to need to see an advert 7 times before they would buy a product. Now, with today's short attention spans and internet advertising, it's something like 30 times. So your colleagues aren't going to get it in one go from a once a year all hands presentation. You need to be telling that story upwards, downwards, across the organisation, and your project sponsor needs to be telling the same story too. We've got our little guy on the slide. Your customer is the hero of the story that you're telling. But bear in mind, your difficult business leader might be the sidekick that needs to make it all happen. If you're stuck around telling a snappy story, try the sentence, we help X do Y by doing Z. So as an example, there's an Internet of Things product called a moo call. You attach it to a cow's tail, and it can tell from the way that tail swishes when a cow's about to give birth. Without the tool, the farmers need to get up in the middle of the night to keep checking on their cows. So we help X do Y by doing Z. So we help farmers get more sleep during calving season by sending a notification to their phone when a cow is about to give birth. So we help X farmers do Y, get more sleep, by sending a notification to their phone. You also need to be educating and involving the rest of your organisation in what good innovation is all about. It's not a secret to be kept to yourself. So with storytelling enough, my second tip for you is around collaboration and influence. Innovation's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. Think of it more like football, where a midfielder makes a tackle, they pass the ball, it's kicked across the box, headed into the back of the net. The whole team has created those winning chances and those goals. Collaboration, it's not just about your team, it's about working with people who are not like you. Really successful companies create an ecosystem of partners. So surround yourself with a diverse set of people, internal, external. Learn from startups, find opportunities to collaborate with your peers, even your competitors. And find ways to involve your colleagues in that ecosystem. If you choose the right arena, then startup challenges and hackathons can be great ways of taking the energy of everyone that works with you to help your company innovate. And you'll need influence. Who do you know? What power do you have? And who can say yes? You'll be able to think of lots of people that can say no, but who can say yes without having to ask for permission? It's probably someone more senior than your project sponsor right now. And have some compassion. The core business is there to deliver cash to fund you and your program. They're just protecting the delivery of their own targets and performance. And be generous. What can you offer to the people that support you? Your help will be reciprocated further down the line the more generous you are. So we've talked about why innovation is tough. We've talked about beating the odds, and we've talked about beating that clock, your 24 months. So where should you start? You fired. Well, no, not really. But let's imagine that you fired yourself and it's your very first day leading innovation in your company. And you're going to spend that day writing a plan for how you're going to invest your energy over the next 2 to 3 months. Where would I suggest you start? Well, build a plan. Look at what's going on. Kill those wrong its. Do it now. If it's not the right it, drop it. Better to stop investing energy in something that's not going to work. And tackle the obstacles. Obstacles are the way. I say that a lot, but I really do believe it. They're your to-do list of where to focus. So improve your awareness. Look at the obstacles. They're telling you what you need to navigate, and they're telling you what's going to hold you back. And remember, you're not alone. Every company that I talk to has a version of these challenges. It's sometimes useful to get an external perspective to help you rethink assumptions about the way things work in your organisation and what's possible. In my experience, you cannot be too bold, but I know that that doesn't always feel that way. So the obstacles, they're not immovable objects. It's more helpful to think of them as corporate muscle memory that needs to be retrained, and you're the PT to retrain them. So we've talked about innovation being tough. You need to beat the odds. You need to beat the clock. I hope you've now got some thoughts about where to start. And thank you very much for listening. So I'm Helen Dawson. I help digital innovation leaders reboot progress so they can get on with delivering business value, either through mentoring, coaching, or consultancy. And if you want to know more, message me on LinkedIn. We can have a virtual coffee. So now let's have some Q&A. So either take yourself off mute or write something in the chat. Do you have any advice on networking, building a wider set of stakeholders to protect the programme? Yes, I think there are two things that really work. I think one is thinking about not only who you know, but who's in your inner circle and who they have influence over, because using the network you already have can be super powerful to start changing people's minds, gaining trust inside an organisation. If you're looking at kind of building stakeholders outside, for me, some of the most useful things have been running startup challenges, and doing that both to kind of make an external splash and say, look, we're innovating, this is what we're doing, but also to build out that network of people that can help you, support you, find you contacts. And I think the more you do it, the easier it is to build on. I was talking to someone last week and they said in one role they used to have 78 conversations a week externally. I mean, that's mind blowing. That's probably a bit too extreme. But yeah, I think it is just persistence and building that network and using the network you've already got to build those new contacts. You often find things come from your second degree kind of contacts. Yeah, I think there's definitely getting executives to talk externally makes it more difficult to cancel. Absolutely. Oh, the best example of an innovation working well. This is going to seem really obvious now, but when I was at Shell and we introduced quick grocery delivery from the stores, and we did that in 2018, and internally people thought we were bonkers, and they were like, why is anyone ever going to use that? And then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden it went to 23 countries in 2 months. So we'd seen these signals around the world and we thought this was promising, but actually the rest of the organization only saw it when they were confronted with something different. So I think that's a kind of really good example of being persistent, knowing what you're working on, seeing some signals, seeing some promise, because then the timing comes good. So yeah, I think that one was a really rewarding innovation. So overnight success, 2 years in the making. This bonkers thing slightly reminds me of some sort of Alice in the Wonderland quote, all the best people are. So you don't need everyone to buy in. You just need people to let you do stuff, which I think is an important distinction. So we had some countries that were keen on it, some individuals, and then we started and we saw deliveries and we had great stories to tell about it. So we had, this is our biggest order. These are the sorts of things people are buying. This is how it compares to the normal business. So we would use those snippets to create sound bites, which executives loved and they repeated. So we had that kind of, oh, we're doing something. It looks promising. Here's why it's cool. And we talked about it everywhere. And I think you do get that sense in a big organisation that I call, everyone's in the race to be second. They want someone else to go first. And then when it's good, they'll jump on board. So we really nurtured those relationships with the people that went early. We were generous. We, talked about them, talked about the potential all the time. And we kept going with the people that believed. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes you can kind of give up too early, but the important thing about being bonkers is keeping going. And all of these innovations, if you look back through time, why did someone start doing something? It didn't make any sense, except it did. They had a story that they could believe in and they could repeat. So yeah, that storytelling piece, I think, is so, so important. And even now, Waitrose avocados are one of the biggest sellers on Deliveroo. So they come from real human behaviour. Any more questions? No, that looks like everything. So thank you very much for joining. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.